Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing abrupt climate change. And thank you all for the comments and the discussion. I haven't really actually been able to get too involved in the comment section in the last couple of days. Just things, and trying to stay cool. It is a warm one. Again, we are in the middle of basically a whole string of days that are like, you know, in the mid 90s. Looks like it's just going on and on and on ad infinitum. So that means actually, you know, mid 90s, possibly hundreds, actually feels like hundreds every single day. I guess you could call this a heat wave. I don't know. In the historical context for California in the summertime, maybe so. It seems a little early in our summer season, although we are ending near end of July, so maybe not. Give me 1 second. So yes, heat seems to be the order of the day for a lot of folks. So let me just jump into this article. I don't have too much time. So in light of the nobody's covering climate change article I had read yesterday, I got onto Yahoo News today, and the first article, top of the page, front headline says, "Heat waves from the Arctic to Japan, a sign of things to come." And this is from today. Intense heat waves like the one which fueled Greece's deadly wildfires are said to become increasingly frequent around the world due to climate change, experts warn. I haven't done a lot of coverage of the Greece fires, and I apologize for that. Hopefully I can get into that. If I don't know what's happening right now there. Is the current heat wave exceptional? Record high temperatures have been registered across the northern hemisphere in recent weeks, from Norway to Japan. Sweltering summers are the norm in Greece, where at least 82 people have been killed in the country's worst ever forest fires. But in Northern Europe, the recent heat wave is exceptional, and the World Meteorological Organization predicts temperatures will continue to beat the seasonal average from Ireland to Scandinavia and the Baltic countries until early August. This has been the hottest July for at least 250 years in Sweden. That's funny. I thought it was, you know, we were entering a minimum and that we're going to get really cold. Where indigenous Sami reindeer herders have been among those worst hit by an unprecedented drought as well as devastating wildfires. Dozens of people have died in Japan in what officials have called an unprecedented heat wave, while California has also notched up record temperatures up to 48.9 C in Chino. That was a hot day. Generally, we have heat waves in one part of the planet, said Anders Leverman, a professor at the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. But now we have an entire northern hemisphere being hot. It's stunning. Is climate change to blame? Each individual event is very difficult to attribute directly to human activity, French climate expert Jean Jouzel told AFP. But the soaring temperatures of recent weeks are consistent with what we expect as a result of climate change caused by greenhouse gas emissions, according to Elena Manenkova, Deputy Director General of the WMO. A study published in the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society concluded in December that global warming was solely responsible for worldwide record temperatures recorded in 2016, as well as an extreme heat wave in Asia. While the 3 last years have been the hottest ever recorded on Earth, the most important question is, will we see this more often if we don't reduce carbon emissions, said Leverman. wonder what the answer to that one is. And this question is the one we can say yes to. Researchers from the World Weather Attribution Project estimated Friday that climate change had made the current heat wave in Northern Europe more than twice as likely to occur. But they cautioned that this was a preliminary analysis published before the end of the heat wave. What can we expect in the decades to come? The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a UN panel of experts, warned in 2012, a 2012 report, that its models forecast increasingly intense episodes of extreme weather in the coming decades. Even if the world manages to limit temperature increases to 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels as agreed in the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, experts predict worse droughts, heat waves, floods, and hurricanes, and across wider stretches of territory. A study published last year in the Nature Climate Change journal warned that even in sticking to the Paris limits, half of the world's population will be vulnerable to deadly heat waves by 2100, compared to about 30% today. Every year we're going to be setting new record temperatures from Russia to France to Japan, Giselle said. Heat waves of this kind, of the kind seen in 2003, which caused more than 70,000 deaths in Europe, 70,000, risk becoming the norm after 2050 or 2060, he added. And with warmer air and drier land, fires will become increasingly common, experts predict. According to the European Commission, 2017 was one of the worst ever years for forest fires in Europe, with 800,000 hectares of land razed in Portugal, Spain, and Italy. And the Commission's PESETA 2 report estimated the area of land vulnerable to fires in southern Europe could increase between 50 and 100% over the 21st century, depending on how quickly the planet warms. It's going to be a lot quicker than 2050 or 2060. I'll tell you that much. So this is what the this is the good old mainstream media article about climate change, at least admitting that there's problems. There are problems, but they're still shooting those dates out, way past. They're talking about in the coming decades, or 2050 or 2060 or 2100. It gets real when you say the date's 2021 or 2025 or even 2030. But I'm sure in some people's minds, 2030 is still like, yeah, we got time. Next up, from Truth Out. This is from William Rivers Pitt from yesterday. We are the Lorax, and we speak for the trees. The temperate rainforests of North America were once so dense, it is said, that a squirrel could travel from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi River without ever touching the ground. Today, of course, the same squirrel would have to navigate the vast East Coast megalopolis, the rolling farmlands of the Midwest and the South, and spaghetti bowl of state and federal highways from here to there and there to here before it could dip its tail in the big river. Places yet remain, however, where the trees still hold sway. Oregon and Washington State still enjoy vast swaths of forest untouched and unseen by the steel diligence of modern enterprise. My little town in rural New Hampshire floats on a verdant sea of foliage that changes color in time, withers, dies, and returns each spring in a bellowing of green. The town itself was zoned so that every neighborhood had its own small forest, a thought unheard of in places like Boston or Manhattan, where the land would have been plundered long ago for its real estate value. Here it was instead decided that the trees, to quote Dr. Seuss, are what everyone needs. Theodore Geisel, aka Dr. Seuss, was in the news after the election of Donald Trump, despite having passed away more than a quarter century ago, and for good reason. The contradictions of Seuss's canon, which oscillates between presenting the sort of virulent racism and stereotyping embraced by Trump's base, and delivering a searing progressive critique of the military-industrial complex, authoritarianism, fascism, and corporate-led environmental destruction, somehow capture the entire spectrum of the current political movement. I'm glad he got to that. or he's getting to this issue about Dr. Seuss. I didn't know where this article was going to go, but I'm happy that it's going here because it's worth discussing. Geisel last surged into the news in September when First Lady Melania, some people say Melanie, exhortated, I think Trump tweet and called her Melanie, exhortated a librarian's decision to decline the Trump family's donation of Seuss books due to racist caricatures of Africans and Asians contained in books such as If I Ran a Zoo. At the time, the librarian, Liz Phipps, Soero of Cambridge, Massachusetts, wrote, "Many people are unaware that Dr. Seuss's illustrations are steeped in racist propaganda, caricatures, and harmful stereotypes, drawing attention to an aspect of the children's author that often gets underemphasized in progressive circles due to the degree of childhood nostalgia that many readers feel in relation to his works." Melania Trump responded by calling Soero divisive, setting off a predictable firestorm between Trump's base and the librarian's defenders. This week, however, Seuss is back in the news for a very different reason. Anthropology professor Nathaniel Dominy, who teaches at Geisel's alma mater, Dartmouth, believes he has found the Lorax, or more specifically, the orange-furred monkey that inspired Geisel's famous character. For those unacquainted with the Lorax, a brief synopsis: an industrialist called the Onceler discovers a gorgeous forest made of truffula trees, which he proceeds to chop down in order to make and sell a nonsense product called a thneed. The Onceler's brutal deforestation displaces birds, fish, and forest animals to the point that the Lorax, a mystical creature who speaks for the trees have no tongues, magically appears to try and stop the Onceler's destructive behavior. Alas, the Onceler's greed cannot be sated, and the truffula forest continues to fall. The Lorax must send all the animals away to find new homes, lest they perish in an onrushing devastation. In the end, when the last tree is finally down, the Lorax disappears through a hole in the smog with only a sad, backward glance. Alone now but for his regrets, the Onceler is left to grow old and sad in the ecological ruins of his own making, but finds one final chance for redemption in the guise of a little boy. On the book's final page, he gives the boy the last truffula seed and orders him to plant a forest to protect it from axes that hack, in hopes that the Lorax and all his friends may come back. The Lorax, published in the earliest days of the environmental movement, have been celebrated for decades for its haunting ecological warning. It had long been believed that the cypress trees of California served as the basis for Geisel's beautiful truffula trees. But now Professor Dominy and his co-authors have proffered that Geisel was inspired to write the book in 1971 after seeing the patas monkey of Kenya and the whistling thorn acacia trees they live in. The patas monkey does bear a striking resemblance to Geisel's Lorax, and the book's artwork depicts trees that closely match the whistling thorn acacia. While many environmental activists have great affection for the Lorax, mainstream interpretations of Geisel's book have often held the character to be something of an angry pest, a bossy, pedantic guilt tripper, according to the Atlantic journalist Joe Fassler, interested only in hugging trees and disrupting the march of progress. Writer Emma Maris, in the journal Nature on the 40th anniversary of the book's publication, called the Lorax a parody of a misanthropic ecologist. Yeah, these descriptions are hardly baseless. The Lorax is vocally pissed and makes no bones about it. So was Geisel when he wrote it. The Lorax, he told the Children's Literature Association quarterly in 1994, came out of me being angry. In the Lorax, I was out to attack what I think are evil things and let the chips fall where they may. Professor Dominy's interpretation turns more than 40 years of accepted understanding of the Lorax on its ear. Our argument, says Dominy in an interview quoted by the Boston Globe, is no. If the Lorax is based on a living animal that has this tight, co-evolved relationship with the tree, then it's better to think of the Lorax not as something some indignant steward of the environment, but as a participating member of the environment. And then this anger is so much more understandable. Indeed, we should all be angry. The weekend newspapers were filled to bursting with stories that would make the Lorax tear off his own mustache. Lawmakers, lobbyists, and administration joined forces to overhaul the Endangered Species Act, blared the New York Times. Not to be outdone, the Washington Post ran a lead headline that read, "Trump administration officials dismissed benefits of national monuments." In combination, these reports were yet another litany of ongoing environmental dissolution. And here was more deep damage done by an administration that has deliberately styled itself the sworn enemy of all living things, should those things perchance to vex the pursuit of cheap profits at the expense of silly liberal trivialities like clean air, unpoisoned water, and unplasticized oceans, not bent on retaliatory murder. Anyone who has read even half an inch of Truth Out reporter Dar Jamal's climate disruption dispatches knows all too well that the planet is on fire. The seas are becoming acid. The sky is actually falling, and the oncelers of the world are greedily stoking the flames. One such squats in the White House. Another does his soot-stained bidding at the EPA, which should now stand for easy profits available. Like that. And all of them, in the Post's words, seek to emphasize the value of logging, ranching, and energy development to the inexorable despair of us all. At the conclusion of the Lorax, the Oncelers left to brood over the endless ruin of stumps and smoke he created. And all that the Lorax left here in his mess, he intones, was a small pile of rocks with the one word, unless. As he contemplates the young boy to whom he gives the last truffula seed, the Onceler finally perceives the possibility of redemption both for himself and for the world he so thoroughly despoiled. But now, he exclaims to the boy, now that you're here, the word of the Lorax seems perfectly clear. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. I have read that story to my daughter hundreds of times, and she pins me with her eyes each time as we reach that line. When we explore our neighboring forest, she collects fallen acorns and announces, "I found another truffula seed, Daddy." Whenever she finds one, during one exploration, we came across an ancient tree with 5 trunks growing from the bole, and she climbed up between them, hands pressed to the bark. She stood there timeless. I wrote upon return, 3 feet of eternity, 3 feet of eternity conducting the energy passing through her, speechless, rigid, in bliss. She was in the palm of a living thing, and she didn't know it. The tree did. And if she didn't know it, the tree did. I am the Lorax, she has told me more than once, and she's right. She is the Lorax, as am I, as are you, as are we all, unless and until we all care a whole awful lot. The Trumplers, manufactured by the sad, strange society of ours, will continue to run rampant, and the truffula trees will fall. The Lorax is not some curmudgeonly environmentalist complaining for the sake of complaining. He was fighting for his life, as are we all. Dedicated to my daughter and to everyone else who speaks for the trees. I thought this was an excellent article, and it brings up so many timely, salient points. I love that book, and I was just reminded that I don't actually have that book in my library to read to my daughter, and I'm going to change that ASAP. But it's interesting that I had a little bit of a back and forth with somebody today on the comment section about Michael Rupert, and you know, I think I was coming from the point of somebody just commented something about him that I took offense to or whatever, but I think I am trying to find like some kind of semblance of like where, you know, there's this huge issue, I think, around climate change and also around political issues and also around social issues of racism, sexism, um, freedom of speech, freedom of thought. You know, there's a lot of argument right now about where are the lines morally, and who do we hold responsible for their deeds or misdeeds, or their lives, or their seeming moral, I guess, downfallings. I don't know. It's just, there's a lot of I think back and forth, you know, between people who are concerned about humans acting badly, and they're rightly concerned, right? You know, we are capable of shitty behavior. All humans are capable of shitty behavior, and we've proven that point over and over and over again. And I think a lot of people are trying to climb out of that that very human capacity for shitty behavior, and be better people, and uphold better principles of behavior, and ask other people to behave better. And all of those things are completely and utterly valid, because, you know, it's wrong to abuse people. It's wrong to stereotype people. It's wrong to treat people badly, you know, based on arbitrary ideas like the color of their skin or what genitalia they have between their legs. And, you know, all of those things, I have very strong feelings about those things, and I want people to act better. I wish that people could act better. And at the same time, I think that it's interesting that we have leaders, or, you know, not just political leaders, but cultural leaders, or people who are successful, or people who are kind of, you know, beacons, if you will, for others. And they have personal problems. And so you know, we find ourselves in this area of like, where, you know, how do we think about these people, you know, Dr. Seuss, or Gandhi, or Martin Luther King, or, you know, or anyone, you know, anyone who has some kind of sway or power over others, anyone who has some kind of success or notoriety, or what have you. You know, how do we go forward in the world? You know, do we erase the positive things that these people have contributed to our lives, because they were possibly very negative people on a personal level? I don't know. I'm just putting that out there as a question, right? You know, what do we do with this thing? You know, like, let's take Michael Rupert. You know, he had some big old personal problems towards the end of his life, and he decided to end his life. And a lot of people are conflicted about, you know, who he was, you know, for real, or, you know, why he took his life, or et cetera, et cetera. And you have that against, you know, the very almost heroic attempt by him to alert people to the reality of the political world that we're living in, the reality of the physical world that we're living in, the reality of the addiction to fossil fuels that we're living in. So, you know, very conflicting parts of his personality, and we can, you know, hopefully take both of those things in and give them equal importance. But What do we do with these conflicting character assessments of people? How do we go forward? And again, even extending that to climate change, like who do we hold responsible and how do we hold them responsible? Do we, we have a huge spectrum of, do we take in the information about climate change and see what we're all basically a part of? And do we shrug our shoulders and go like, well, looking pretty bad, or do we just go forward and try to do positive things in the face of this? Do we encourage others to do positive things? But, then we start getting it, when you start taking action, when you start saying, no, we can't do these things, how far do we go with that? Do you start holding people responsible? Do you start shaming people and blaming people for not giving a shit, for blaming people for not doing the right thing in the face of this, blaming people for not even accepting this knowledge? Do we start, Edward Abbey style monkey wrench gang taking out, utilities or public, public works projects? Like there's just a whole range, there's a whole spectrum of what can or should be done in the face of climate change. And even just that huge question can leave somebody feeling like helpless, can leave somebody feeling like, what? I don't know what to do. Do I get mad? Do I rage? Do I hold somebody responsible? Do I hold myself responsible? What do I do with this in the face of this? Extremely, extremely dire situation. I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know what action to take. On a lot of days, all I can do is manage myself. All I can do is manage my own actions and make sure that I am holding myself up to the highest standard that I possibly can. And I guess that's all that we can do. But I don't know, there are truths and there are truth tellers out there that put themselves in harm's way, actually, by, fighting against man's own inhumanity to man, or man's inhumanity to nature. And I have to actually support those people that put themselves in harm's way, personal failings or not. I have to actually say, this is a brave step, and allow those people to maybe get better, point out their problems as possibly abusive to others, or possibly harmful or hurtful to other people, and allow them to maybe get better, hope for them to get better, but encourage the truth telling, because we need it more than ever. We need the truth to be told. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that, but I just want to interject that. And I think that that's something, especially in the social media world, that we are finding, people wanting to tell the truth and wanting to know the truth, and even, wanting to tell the truth about other people, like, hey, this person isn't so great. Hey, this person, is acting in a way that's not beneficial to others, or possibly abusive to others, and they want to tell that truth. And I think we should encourage that truth telling as well. It's just very difficult. The moral high ground is a very slippery slope, and the judgment of others is a very slippery slope. And I guess at the end of the day, all we can do is go forward and hope for a consensus, and hope for compassion, and try to correct with love if we can. I think I have used up my time for today. I was going to read another article, but I just had to indulge in that rant. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Hope to be back tomorrow with another video. Until next time, peace.